There is a shift that happens quietly in certain minds, and most people never notice it while it is happening. At first, they explain everything. They explain their decisions, their intentions, their mistakes, before anyone even asks. They explain themselves so carefully, so repeatedly, that it almost feels like control. But slowly, something changes. Not suddenly, not emotionally, but structurally. One day, they stop sending the long message. They stop correcting every misunderstanding. They stop repairing every perception. And instead of anxiety, they feel something unexpected. Silence, not emptiness, control. And this is where confusion begins. Because from the outside, this looks like pride, or detachment, or arrogance. But internally, something very different is happening. To understand it, you have to understand what the mind is doing when it explains itself. Most people believe explanation is communication. But in reality, explanation is regulation. A way to calm uncertainty inside the mind. Think about the last time someone misunderstood you. The conversation lasted seconds. A sentence. A reaction. A misinterpretation. But afterward, something longer began. You replayed it. You corrected it. You rebuilt it. You searched for better responses. And slowly, the goal stopped being understanding. The goal became relief. Psychologists call this rumination, a loop where the mind returns to unresolved situations, not to solve them, but to reduce discomfort. From the inside, it feels like thinking, but it behaves like repetition. And repetition, without resolution, creates tension. The brain does not like unfinished patterns, so it keeps reopening them, again and again and again. Neuroscience describes the brain as a prediction system. Its job is to reduce uncertainty. But in modern life, uncertainty cannot always be solved through thinking alone. So the mind substitutes something else. More thinking, more explanation, more internal dialogue. And here is where the shift begins. At some point, certain people notice a pattern. Every time they explain themselves, they feel brief relief. But it never lasts. Because the real problem was never misunderstanding. It was dependence on external validation. The need to explain yourself is often the fear that your own judgment is not enough. Most people think confidence is defending themselves well. But psychologically, confidence is reduction of internal negotiation. The moment your judgment becomes stable, you stop arguing with yourself through other people. Silence becomes natural, not forced, not strategic, natural. But here is the misunderstanding. Silence is not rejection and not emotional distance. It is prioritization of attention. Attention is not something you use. It is something that builds you. Whatever your attention returns to, again and again, begins shaping identity. Not every misunderstanding deserves correction. Not every opinion deserves response. Not every emotion deserves participation. Not every thought deserves continuation. If I stop explaining myself, won't people misunderstand me more? Yes, sometimes they will. But maturity begins here. Because peace was never built on universal understanding. That was never possible. If I stop explaining myself, will I seem arrogant? Arrogance is not silence. Arrogance is the need to control perception. Silence is removal of unnecessary engagement. What if I regret it? Regret rarely comes from silence. It comes from over-investing attention in things that never mattered. Attention is not neutral. It is not harmless. It is the architect of identity. Whatever repeatedly receives your attention becomes familiar. What becomes familiar becomes normal. What becomes normal becomes you. And this is the real shift. You stop asking, how do I make them understand me? You start asking, why is this still in my attention? That question is psychological independence. You stop needing to win every conversation. You stop needing to resolve every misunderstanding. You stop needing to justify every decision. Not because you stopped caring, but because you stopped confusing attention with identity. Strong people are not those who are understood the most. They are those whose attention survives unnecessary noise. Whatever repeatedly receives your attention does not just occupy your mind. It shapes your decisions, your behavior, your identity, and eventually, your life. You did not become what you intended. You became what you repeatedly returned to. And by then, it is already visible. Not in what you said, but in what you allowed to stay in your mind.